If I were to pull a random person aside with no sales experience and tell them that, hey, you could make $5,000 off of one sale without ever selling anything before, they would probably look at me crazy and probably even walk away. They walk away because 99% of people think that in order to make a sale, you need to have an arsenal of skills and a bunch of sales experience in order to start making money. And what they don't realize is that sales is a game of psychology, and by using psychology alone, you can close a high-ticket sales call with no experience. Unlike other sales coaches, I teach the importance of using psychology during the sales calls and how psychology alone can close a high-ticket deal. And this is what I call the internal game of sales. In this video, I'm going to talk about two key components of the internal game of sales, which are psychology of a high-performing closer and detachment from the outcome. And before I start off with the topic, I want to note the reason why I'm saying you don't need to have prior sales experience if you want to start closing deals consistently is that I myself did not have prior experience before starting an actual sales job. And it wasn't until I got that job that I learned what it really takes to become a consistent closer. I started a job and I started analyzing what really goes into a successful sale. And that was both on the skill side of things as well as the psychological side of things. I understood that to be consistent, you need to combine both aspects. The main thing that you need to start off with though is the foundations. And the foundations are the psychological side of things. And it wasn't until I was months into the business when I actually learned the game of sales and I realized that you can make a sale strictly off who you are as a person and how you interact and you treat the client. The only thing you need to do is to close the deal is have a transfer of trust. And as soon as they give you that transfer of trust, that's when you know you've closed the deal. And you could sit there all day with the best script, you could sit there all day, have the best sales skills on paper, but if you don't really get into the client's mind and you don't really tap into their emotions as you should and make them understand why they need to buy from you specifically, you're never gonna make the sale. And that's why in the internal game of sales, that's actually the most important aspect of closing deals. Consistent sales closers always have a set of characteristics about them, as well as a specific mindset that they carry around with them, and it can't be changed from interaction to interaction. This is what's known as the psychology of a high-performing closer. As long as you show confidence throughout the entire sales call and you prove to the client that you really believe in what you're selling, you're gonna have no problem selling anything. And the thing is, the most difficult part about that is actually sticking to these principles throughout the sales call. But if you do get them right, you just rinse and repeat. A big reason why a lot of people lose sales is because they self-sabotage the deal. They get too much into their head. They start thinking bad things like, will this person really pay me $5,000 for this program? Is it really worth this much money? Can I really sell this? They first get into their heads and they start thinking bad thoughts. The client may not even be thinking these thoughts, but when you put them into your own head, that becomes your reality. You start self-sabotaging the deal right away without even knowing it. And all you're doing is letting the clients guide themselves to a no. So be confident in what you're selling because you know what you're selling has value. And if it didn't have value, there would be no reason why the person would even be on the sales call with you in the first place because, I mean, there would be no curiosity. So you need to play to win rather than playing not to lose. As soon as you play to not lose, you start to get uptight. You're not loosened up. You're not fully opening up to the client so that they can feel like they can actually trust you and have a real conversation with you. The only way to do it is to go all out, give it your all, because I mean, the worst thing they can do is tell you no. And another thing that gets a lot of closers in trouble is just by simply over explaining things. Make your point, make it simple so that the client can understand what you're saying, and then move on to the next point. Don't keep attacking the same point and hammering it home like the client is 2 years old. They don't understand what you're talking about. This alone can lose the deal because it can off-put a client to even want to talk to you anymore. And that's when it starts to get salesy and when it starts to feel like you're being pushy. And that turns people off instantly. It's as simple as going in there and having a conversation with the client. They want a connection with you. They want somebody they can actually trust on a personal level. And the only way you can do that is by having a genuine conversation with them and not hammering home with a sales script or sales tactics, because it's easy for them to recognize when you start to get salesy. Like I said, at the moment in time when you do that, they start to put up their guard and they instantly shut down. They can't listen to anything that you're saying from that point on in the conversation because really all they're thinking about is, when is this guy going to pitch this offer to me, rather than listening and understanding. Also, something that you have to learn to live with is rejection, especially in sales. Most people don't know how to hear the word no and continue throughout their day like nothing happened. People fear rejection, and a lot of people can't really handle when it comes up. But the thing is, in sales, you're always going to get rejected. The thing is, how quickly can you move forward after that rejection? How quickly can you remove your memory and move on to the next call? That's what it's all about, getting through rejection and continuing on. The people that, go to the next person that actually willing to listen to what you're offering. A thing that can kill a deal that a lot of people do when they're first starting out in sales is they start trying to make exceptions to the rule because they don't want to hear the client tell them, no, I'm not interested. They don't want to get rejected, so they start adding crazy discounts. They start letting the client get off with a reschedule to the second call, and then let me think about it. They start getting away with that. They start going away from their principles just because they don't want to hear a straight up no, when in the back of their mind, they know that by the client doing these things, they're basically telling them no anyways. It's just going to be an easier letdown at that point. So stick to your pricing, stick to your offer. Don't let the client sway you, because as soon as you do that, you've lost all control, and now the client's in control, which that can never happen during a sales call. And the last and most important piece of psychology that I want to give you here is that logic doesn't always close the deal, but emotion does. And what that means is that most people are swayed by emotions first and logic second. The reason why I always say that psychology comes before any skill set that you can have in sales is that skill alone won't get you the sale. The client has to feel a shift of trust in order to say yes. You need to do whatever you can do to build that trust during the conversation and get the client's emotions working so that when it comes time to go for the close, it's going to be an easy yes with no objections. Because what will happen during the sales call is you'll get their emotions on a string first. They'll react emotionally. And then secondly, their logic will kick in and they'll realize that they're going to actually need what you're offering. And by doing this, you combine both emotional and intellectual into one, which is a guaranteed sale. Detachment from the outcome during a sales call seems like it would be a simple task, but in reality, a lot of closers struggle to do so. Detachment from the outcome alone separates a lot of elite closers from struggling ones. And what it can do is it can shift the whole conversation from sounding like you're in a desperate, needy position to adding value to people's lives. And the easiest way to do this and to put it into perspective is having an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset. Successful closers always have an abundance mindset because they know that not everybody's going to say yes. They're not all going to be sales, but you have to realize that the next person is already waiting behind them in line, and the next person that hops on the call is actually going to be interested in what you have to offer. They're going to see the value in it and they're going to buy from you. And also, never lower your standards to appeal to the person that you're meeting with. Don't negotiate, because as soon as you do that, you lose control of the sales call. If they can't meet your standards, they can't accept your offer as it is, then you don't need to do business with them in the first place. You need to understand when to walk away from these people, because if you don't walk away and you play let's make a deal with them, you might get the sale every now and then, but in the long term, it's only going to cause you headaches and problems. They're going to want a refund. They're just not going to be somebody that you want to work with anyways. So avoid that. Never lower your standards. Your standards are there for a reason, and people need to live up to these expectations if they want your help. And those right there are the two components of the internal game of sales. The only two components that you need to close your first $2,000 to $5,000 sale. And as you can see, neither one of them relates to anything related to having a bunch of sales experience. It's all a mindset thing. And that's exactly how you're gonna close a high ticket deal with no sales experience. So I hope you learned some things in this video that you can implement on your own and start seeing changes in your own results immediately. And that concludes the video. If there's any topics or ideas that you want me to create content around, be sure to drop those down below in the comments, and I'll be sure to make a video relating to those topics. But I will be back with more content.